أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله والحمد حقه كما يستحقه حمدا كثيرا. وأعوذ به من شر نفسي إن النفس لأمارة بالسوء إلا ما رحم ربي. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وسيد المرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المطهرين المكرمين. ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من أول يوم ظلمهم إلى قيام يوم الدين. السلام عليك سيدي ومولاي يا أبا عبد الله، وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت، وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. صلوات اللهم صل على محمد. قال الله العظيم في كتابه الكريم وهو أحسن القائلين وأصدق الصادقين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والذين يقولون ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the purification of the souls, the enlightenment of the hearts, for the hastening of the reappearance of Baqiyatullah al-A'zam, Ruhi wa Arwah al-Alameen lahu al-Fida, enlighten your souls and the atmosphere with the recitation of salawat upon Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. Respected scholars, elders, brothers and sisters, salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. It is the objective of every couple who enter into this special union. It is deemed to be one that brings about happiness, joy, bliss, and tranquility in the lives of human beings. It is desired and should be the objective of the believers to seek in order to obtain the pleasure of God as well as ultimate victory on the day of judgment. Successful marriages are indeed the goal of every couple who enter into this special union and relationship, in the idea that when people come together and enter into marriage, you will not find anyone having the objective of reaching a failed marital contract, meaning that in order for marriage to attain its objective or fulfill its goal, people want it to be successful, irrespective of their background, irrespective of their denomination. Indeed, the goal of attaining a successful marriage is something that every single couple who enter into a marriage is likely to seek, is likely to want to have. No doubt, what a successful marriage is in reality is another discussion, in the idea that maybe it is a subjective matter, where certain individuals will have a certain understanding of what constitutes a successful marriage, whilst others will think a different manner. The first thing to ask is, of course, is a successful marriage possible or impossible? Meaning what? Meaning that many people have come to discuss the achievement of such a realization in the idea that some people say that when it comes to marriages, it is what deemed to be something which is quite challenging for many people. They have witnessed the rise of divorce rates, for example, in many parts of the world and in many communities. Here in Australia, statistics from 2015 by the government shows that divorce rates increased by 4.3% from what? From 2014. Similarly, we find people are putting off marriage. In the United States, it is recorded that in the 60s, approximately 76% or over 18s were married. Today is what? Is about 50%. Which highlights what? Which highlights that marriage as an institution is indeed in danger, because there are many fears in the hearts and in the minds of people when it comes to this particular relationship, and that they see examples before them, they see things happening, and they wonder whether a successful marriage can actually materialize. Can it actually happen? Yes? There are some who have said it is impossible. There are some who have said something like this can never be achieved because of their preconceived ideas. There are some who have said, well, you can try. For example, Socrates, the famous philosopher, Greek philosopher, what does he say? He says, by all means, get married. If you marry the right person, you're happy. If you marry the wrong person, you'll become a philosopher. That is according to this particular individual. Others have said, I have seen individuals who have reached a certain level of their lives, and what? The continuous bickering and the conflicts and the disagreements that people witness and see between husbands and wives are what? Placing this notion of attaining happiness and success in zawaj or marriage as a far-fetched thought. Someone said that once there was a couple who were in their 70s, they went on a vacation. When they went on a vacation, it is said that the wife was in the supermarket, she was caught stealing. She was taken to court. The judge asked her, what did you steal? She said, I stole a can of peaches, inside, peaches. He said, how many peaches were in this can? Why did you steal? She said, I was hungry, I opened it up, I stole it. He said, how many peaches were inside the can? She said, 6. He said, because of this, I will sentence you to 6 days in jail. All of a sudden, her husband was sitting in the court. He said, Your Honor, I need to add some more information. He said, what is it? He said, my wife also stole a can of peas and sweet corn. The realization is what? That sometimes this is seen in marital examples between people that sadly exists in many parts. When we look at this whole institution, of course, the religion of Islam comes forward to highlight how sacred this relationship is in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I tell you, how beautiful has the Quran talked about marriage. Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala says, it is amongst His signs, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. When Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala links this to Himself, this idea must indeed present to us that it is indeed special. No doubt, when the Almighty said, I am the one who is blessing this relationship, and it is amongst my signs. Similarly, الرسول الأعظم والنبي الأكرم محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم, in a narration says, ما بني في الإسلام بناء أقدس عند الله من التزويج. Yes, there is no institution in Islam that has been built that is more sacred in the eyes of God than marriage. Because indeed, through marriage and the correct procedures and the right way of interacting between the husband and wife, the community and the society is built on healthy foundations, on strong basis, no doubt. Similarly, the narrations tell us that the salah of an individual who is married is 70 times more worthy than the salah of the bachelor. Narrations tell us that there will be a greater number of people punished in Jahannam who are bachelors than those who are married. Narrations tell us that through marriage, rizq increases, and there are people who have actually tried this and have seen this in reality. Therefore, the emphasis to marry is present in the religion of Islam. Yes, it's highly recommended. Ulama say that on secondary considerations, al-anaween al-thaniya in fiqh, they say marriage can sometimes become obligatory if the individual is committing sins, if the individual is falling into error and disobedience of God by not being married, then marriage becomes obligatory upon them. Sometimes some of our brothers and sisters, they struggle when it comes to convincing their parents. They say, you know, I need to get married. They say, you're too young. You're not yet, for example, qualified as a professional. You're not yet in the state financially to be married. They struggle. One of the areas is that, God forbid, if there is a committing of dhunub and sins, indeed our ulama are quite clear on this area, that the marriage indeed must take place to safeguard one's religion, no doubt. So therefore, the question must be presented, and that is what? And that is a successful marriage in the eyes of the religion of Islam, through modern day as well, tips and recommendations. Is it something that can be achieved? And if it is something that can be obtained, how do we look for it? How do we attain it? Because sometimes when you discuss this subject, those who are not married say, you know, it is not for me. I'm not yet married. I'm not in that zone yet. And those of our brothers and sisters, may Allah bless them, in their 40s and 50s, alhamdulillah, who have been married for so many years, they think it's not for me. Yes, my marriage is good. My marriage is, alhamdulillah, intact. Yes? No, the subject is relevant for all. Why? Because those who are seeking to get married need to prep themselves and get in the stage of preparation from this moment, in that it is not about understanding the prerequisites later when they perhaps find their spouse. Similarly, those who are married, there is a need to continuously maintain the marriage. There is a need also to be exemplary role models for others, especially for the children. Yes? Therefore, it is a subject that is relevant to different people at all different age groups, for example, and phases as far as marital life is concerned. Before discussing this subject, though, I would like to touch upon a very critical area which is needed for us to appreciate where we stand today as far as marital conflicts, as far as marital assistance, as far as general care in the community associated with marriage and family life. When we look around in different societies, we find there is a very interesting phenomena that has existed for many years. You'll only perhaps pick on this if you're focused on this area, if you do research on the subject of marriage, if you attend courses, if you buy books and read the books. What is that? Very interestingly, what I found is that in different areas in the Western world, here, for example, in America, in Europe, what do we find? We find there is a very strong movement in terms of providing services for the community as far as marital counseling, therapy, assistance, books, workshops, all kinds of things out there. From what? From the church and from those who are followers of the Christian faith. You go on Amazon, for example, you search for books on marriage. You'll find books such as, for example, The Marriage Book or Seeking a Happy Marriage, for example. You think, wow, We buy this book, yes? When you buy this book, what do you find? You find it's often written by individuals who are espousing the Christian faith. And within the book, they have references quite frequently to the Bible, but they embed it within the actual discussion. So people think, okay, that sounds good, yes? But they've become very active in this regard, yes? This doesn't necessarily mean that the books are not to be bought or read, but just to highlight the point. Where are we with regards to such work? What do we mean? Today, when we look at our communities, there is no doubt that many of us are aware that we are facing challenges as far as family life is concerned. The first challenge that we are facing is with regards to definition of what a family is. Because I tell you, the definition is no longer a female and a male coming together under one particular household. There are now other definitions as far as what a family is in the Western world, yes? Indeed, this country is also going to go through a survey, yes, in order for people to decide whether there will be the same gender marriages or whether they will be accepted, whether they are somehow legalized, yes? The question, of course, people ask is, what is the position of Muslims when it comes to this area? How do we respond? Of course, the position is very clear in the Holy Quran. Every human being is free to make a decision and to choose. The choice is yours. But the Quran is clear on this area, no doubt, that the religion of Islam stands with other religions, such as Christianity and Judaism, in saying that we do not espouse hatred, we do not call for violence, we do not accept any kind of insult towards individuals who make certain choices in life. However, as far as the Quranic injunction and direction is concerned, yes, practices such as homosexuality, it is not part of the teachings of the religion of Islam. Yes, indeed, from our understanding, similar things can be said about other monotheistic religions such as Christianity and Judaism. The message of the Quran is very clear in this regard. Yes, there is no ambiguity as far as this area is concerned. Yes, and as far as Muslims are concerned, of course, they are free to choose. Yet, if they follow the Quran, then they'll know exactly which direction to go as far as this area. The other challenge that we are facing is what? The conflicts that we keep hearing about, or people like myself and others have to deal with on a very regular basis. The breakdown in family relationships, in marital dealings, for example, between the husband and the wife, challenges with child upbringing. All this poses a very important question. What are we doing as scholars, as leaders in the community, as businessmen and women, as those who are, alhamdulillah, blessed with wealth, as those who have the opportunity to do something? What are we doing with regards to this area? Are we waiting for others to somehow formulate and bring about and instigate some change in society and make things happen? Or are we beginning to what? To start to be proactive in this area? Let me give you a few examples. Within the discussion surrounding spouse selection, what are we doing in order to facilitate this process for our brothers and sisters? Because I tell you, the method that has been going on for years may still work, yes. May Allah bless our mothers. They go to the weddings, and they indeed come back with a report, a bulletin, on Al Jazeera. It is called the marriage report. They come back and say, I saw this person and I saw this person. What do you think about this person? And what do you think about this person? For my personal dealings with some of the brothers, they say, I don't like this method anymore, yes? I would like to be able to choose the person myself. Yet today we are facing a realization that as far as tools are concerned, in order to make this process something which is modern, and in line, of course, with Sharia, and it's acceptable as far as teachings of the religion of Islam is concerned, perhaps we have not invested, and we have not researched, we have not presented various options available for people. Number one. Number two, when it comes to dealing with conflicts in marriage, when it comes to couples wanting help, where do they go to? No doubt, often they go to ulama and scholars, and may Allah bless them and reward them. But I will be honest and brutal in this point, because alhamdulillah, I'm blessed to be within the area, or one of my interests is the subject of marriage, yes? And the work that we do in Europe is specifically with this regard, the workshops and the courses. One area that I would like to present is our ulama, by and large, alhamdulillah, they're aware of the Islamic laws and how to, for example, present what is right and what is wrong Islamically. But how many are trained in counseling and therapy? How many are able to be called marital therapists, yes? And have gone through proper training on how to deal with marital conflict when, for example, they're presented with various different challenges, yes? This is a very pertinent, important question. Sayyid al-Shuhada, Aba Abdullah al-Hussain, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi, made it very clear, do not stagnate in your movement in life. Constantly look for reform. Don't just accept whatever's being presented out there. Look for this change. Go for introspection. Dissect what your behavior, personally, community, society. We have to analyze. إني لم أخرج أشرا ولا بطرا ولا ظالما ولا مفسدا ولكنني خرجت لطلب الإصلاح في أمة جدي أريد أن أأمر بالمعروف وأنهى عن المنكر. The movement of the Imam, with something we should constantly remind ourselves, is to reform for the better. We should not be afraid of the word reform. Yes, we need to be able to move. I was surprised, a group of our brothers who were studying in one of the houses were given an opportunity to go and undertake a leadership development program. The person leading this program told me personally, he came to them, they've been studying in the house for a few years. Brothers, let's go through this program. You will learn many new skill sets. No. We have studied in the house. We know how it is. One of the hallmarks of a scholar is their humility. Their eagerness to constantly learn. Not to say I'm above this, yes? It is of the utmost importance that we encourage our ulama, we encourage our scholars, we encourage people who are in this field to have the proper accreditation, to have gone through the courses, to have gone through the various different methods of learning the tools, the latest tools and techniques to deal with these challenges. Similarly, when you look at, for example, mediation, as far as a difficult time of divorce is concerned, yes, this is all part of what we need to think about. I ask you, how many marriage institutes do we have here in Australia? How many of these organizations do we have in America or in the United Kingdom and Europe in the Western world? Where people will think, you know what? I want these publications. I want these helps. I want this phone line that I can call when I have a problem. I want this chat service where I can connect to when I have this challenge or issue or fiqh example or challenge. I want to go and see this scholar or this psychologist or this therapist. Yes? I want to be shown how I should save my marriage. Today, don't wait for someone to come and do this. The challenge is upon every single one of us, no doubt, yes? Let's not wait for example, leaders of the community or anyone else out there to initiate such a process. We need to think about these things. We need to build for the future of our community. We need to ensure that as far as future generations are concerned, we have thought about necessary tools for them to what? To enhance this very important relationship that exists and needs to be protected and needs to be developed. Yes? Let's have a look at this idea. The first point to indeed present and question is, as far as marriages are concerned, what are the causes of marital breakdowns? Why do marriages fail in some instances? Why do we find that in some cases people simply give up and either separate or move towards what? Move towards, God forbid, divorce. Why? Each and every one of us will perhaps be able to come up with a reason. According to different statistics, different surveys and data across the world, one of the most fundamental reasons for marriage breakdowns is financial difficulties. People face challenges as far as making ends meet. People, for example, are under extensive pressure when it comes to what? Spending in the household. And I tell you, subhanallah, sometimes we see that this materialistic society out there has had an impact on many different areas of our lives. And one of them is on marriage. In which way? that sometimes there is the pressure to keep up with the Joneses, as they say, yes? Continuously get this idea and do this and travel to this place and get this car and so on and so forth. The pressure can be relentless and places great strain on the relationship between the husband and the wife, yes? And what do you find? You find because of this materialistic driven tendency, there is pressure on the wife to work as well as the husband. So they're both working, yes? Less time to spend with each other, less time to focus on areas they can build their love and their relationship with each other. And what? Less time for child upbringing and focus on the real important issues because they're constantly tired, they're constantly drained in order to keep up the finances. Similarly, what we are told? We are told, for example, depression, anxiety, mental illnesses are another cause of marital breakdowns. You have affairs and infidelity. You have anger and the losing of temper and control and the abuse that happens, either domestic, yes, abuse or psychological abuse. You have family interference and the, for example, influence, which sometimes separates people. Physical illness. One critical point which I'd like to draw your attention towards, very important for us to appreciate this, even for those who are not married yet. One of the key causes of marital breakdowns is the incompatibility of values. Please understand this so critical point. What do we mean? Sometimes when people look to get married, yes, I ask the brother, you want to get married? Yes. What are you looking for in marriage? Oh, brother, the looks. And they must be from a particular family and they must be educated very well. Yes? These are, objectives and wishes that not necessarily bad. Yes? But what are the key values that we hold so dearly that we cannot be without? For example, let me give you an example. Sometimes we have seen in different communities, as far as marrying hijabi versus non-hijabi sisters. Some of our brothers, they go around, they say, you know what, I don't mind, say a sister who's not hijabi. Later, I will make her wear hijab. I will ask her wear hijab. When we grow stronger together, when she will listen to me, when everything's rosy. I've seen it, mashallah, in Hollywood, and God forbid, Bollywood. And she will listen to me and, everything will be fine. Don't worry, everything will be good. On the other side, some sisters, yes, sometimes wearing hijab, they feel under pressure. Sometimes they say that I'm not in a position to get married. Why? Because the brothers out there are looking for non-hijabis. And because I'm a hijabi, I'm disadvantaged. I say to those sisters, if a brother is looking for an individual in life and wants you to take off your hijab, he doesn't deserve you. Doesn't deserve you. Don't start off your life with the disobedience of God at the expense of what? At the expense of angering Almighty subhanahu wa ta'ala and pleasing some human being. Yes? These are sometimes for certain people values. They will never compromise on these values. Now, what happens is, if the marriage is based on incompatible values, later on cracks begin to appear and the cracks become bigger and bigger because for both the husband and the wife, these values are dear to their hearts. And they didn't think and place them on the table at the beginning when they're searching. They're looking more in a more lustful intention sometimes when they want to find their husband or wife, rather than what? What really matters as far as husband and wife is concerned. Similarly, what do we find? The studies today, indeed, psychologists have talked about. What have they talked about? They said today we are experiencing a very interesting phenomenon. This phenomena is where people are very much geared towards giving up and acquiring new things very, very quickly. Remember, in this day and age, when things break down, for example, you've got a TV, maybe it's a few years old, you don't think to fix it. The normal procedure is, I'll just get a new one, yes? People, often what is happening out there is they're not focused on mending their relationship. There is the new term which is known as the throwaway marriage, which means people are more reluctant to be patient, to try hard for their marriage to be strengthened, but they consider the option of separation and divorce very quickly, yes? Without necessarily placing the effort and going through the struggles and the difficulties to make it work. And they start to drift apart. I remember reading the story of an individual who married someone. He was from a background where during his childhood he was poor. He never understood certain techniques and etiquettes. She was raised in a respected family, and she used to have birthdays and whatever. When they got married, her first birthday, she was expecting that, he really looks after her in that way. That, for example, he brings her the flowers. That, for example, he surprises her. He bought her, he knows that you have to buy, ideally, and God help those who forget their birthdays of the other, yes? What happens is you need to bring gifts or presents. So he bought these gifts and he placed them in a plastic bag. He bought them from the supermarket. He left them in the kitchen. 2 days before her birthday, she came and found it there. She said, what is this? He wasn't really bothered. He needs to keep it a secret. He needs to wrap it. On her birthday, on the exact day he came, he gave it to her in the plastic bag and said, happy birthday. Now she was quite upset by this. She'd never been given a birthday present like this ever in her life. She stormed out of the house, yes? She wouldn't speak to him that day. Later he came back and said, what's wrong? She's like, maybe he doesn't know, but she kept the hurt. But there was what? There was no discussion of this issue, and they began to drift apart. She began to think that he doesn't really love me, because who would do this to their own wife? He began to think that, she's a very complex, difficult person. Who wouldn't accept this gift? I bought her a gift, she should accept it, right? So they started to drift apart, and unfortunately, that was the precursor, and they eventually divorced. What we are told is this unfortunate tendency to give up quite quickly is a hallmark of modern day living. Sadly, this throwaway marriage is another cause of the breakdown in relationship. Therefore, the question that is being posed is, how do we work towards attaining a successful marriage as far as recommendations and tips are concerned? Ultimately, the most important factor that must be kept into consideration in the eyes of the couples and anyone out there who ventures into this very important journey in life is to make God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the center stage of marriage. Please understand and appreciate this very pivotal point. When you examine the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He speaks about marriage, often He refers to marriage to Himself. Yes, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُمْ. Allah tabarak wa ta'ala in Surah An-Nisa, يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ اتَّقُوا رَبَّكُمْ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُمْ مِنْ نَفْسٍ وَاحِدَةٍ وَخَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا. It is me who has made this marriage something very pivotal. Yes? Similarly, He refers to the nafs, the idea of the soul, which the ulama then come to conclude that as far as marital relationship and marriage is concerned, it is so sacred because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it so. And in order for it to be successful, God must be in the center stage of everything that we do. In some cases, we lack spirituality in marriage. What do we mean? When you look at, for example, the beautiful life of Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, and Sayyidatul Nisa, Fatimah al-Zahra, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhima. A wonderful example of a couple who indeed placed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as center stage for their relationship. What do you find? Everything fell into place because the pleasure of God was of the utmost importance. It was the number one goal in their mind. In which way? One day somebody came to the Holy Prophet and Nabi al-A'zam al-Rasul al-Akram Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And when he came, he said to him, I'm poor and I'm hungry. Can you please give me some food? The Prophet asked his family, his wives. They said, we don't have anything. Amir al-Mu'mineen was in the mosque. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I'll take him home. Now, Sayyida Fatima, salamullahi alayha, did not know that this man is coming, yes? When Amir al-Mu'mineen brought him home, there is one objective in the household, the pleasure of God. Whatever Allah is pleased with, we're happy with. We'll sacrifice as long as we attain the pleasure of the Almighty. So the man is bought by Amir al-Mu'mineen. Do you know what Sayyidah Fatima does? She discusses with the Imam. She doesn't discuss and say, why did you bring him? We don't have food. They didn't have enough food. They had food for one person. Neither herself, nor Imam, nor their children had eaten. So they both, because there is that compatibility, they speak with each other. They decide that we're going to place the children asleep hungry. And we're going to serve this food to this poor man by blowing off the candle so that he doesn't realize that Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen is not eating with him, so that he is fully satisfied. Allahu Akbar. Notice the love that these individuals have for humanity for the sake of Allah. Yes? When this man eats, he's not bothered that it's in the dark. As long as there's food before him, he eats. The next day, the Prophet of Islam says to Amir al-Mu'mineen, Allah has rewarded you and has honored you with a verse in the Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, chapter 59, verse number 9. وَيُؤْثِرُونَ عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ وَلَوْ كَانَ بِهِمْ خَصَاصَةٌ. They prefer others over themselves, even though they needed it more. Such is the spirit, yes? We are told if we fear God in marital relationships, if we make this objective very, very clear, if we become partners as husband and wife, helping each other to achieve that idea, to achieve that noble goal of what? Of paradise, of working hard, seeking the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, of complementing each other as far as that journey is concerned, then what? Then we're on the right track in this regard. I tell you, it is mentioned, and please don't forget this, in marriage, it is recommended for you and I to be the soap or the candle. Which one would you like to be in the marital life? Yes? What do we mean? When it comes to the candle, what does it do? When you light up a candle, it lights the area, yes, whilst it burns itself. Yes? It is helping the people around. Yes? It burns itself. True? What does the soap bar do? If you have a soap bar, it also what? Its size is reducing. But when people use it, it is beneficial. It's helping the cleansing of their hands. Yes? Therefore, indeed, in a marriage, we are recommended that we practice self-sacrifice, altruism. Brothers and sisters, sadly, the ego and self-centeredness and the idea of me first and everyone else second sometimes overwhelms us. Sometimes we deal with our spouses as our number one enemy. Sometimes we deal with them as our adversaries rather than our best friends. And not only best friends, people, because we are believers, yes? There may be wrong happening. But above all, we must keep reminding ourselves of the bigger picture that exists. The bigger picture for us is akhirah. Dunya is very short. Dunya is temporary. You and I, when you and I understand this important prerequisite, we can certainly move on and are able to connect the various pieces of the puzzle as far as attaining that successful marital relationship is concerned. Similarly, moving on, we are told that as far as a key factor in this objective is communication. What do we mean? Yes. Studies have shown many a times breakdown in marriages is a result of a breakdown in communication. But I tell you, communication is a very huge area. People often say, what are you talking about? 3 fundamental things of great importance. Number 1, the spending of time together. What do we mean? In this day and age where it's so busy, we're constantly on the go. We're either on the phones, when we're eating, we're engaged. Yes, people are on the phones too, or distracted. There is a need for us to have protected time as couples. Time where quality interactions take place, yes? It is designated and something that is presented and looked after, and it is something that happens on a frequent basis between the husband and the wife. And even if sometimes we have to compromise on our other activities, on things that we like to have and do, but marriage is more important. And to preserve the marriage is more critical. That's number one. Number two, talking. What do you mean? Imagine that, for example, there is a person, a husband, who's sitting before a television screen. When they sit before a television screen, their wife is sitting next to them. The wife is talking to them. They've come back from work, yes? The husband is saying, yes, yes, I know. Yes, no doubt. Yes, I agree. Yes. And they're watching the TV, flicking through the channels. Oh, did you see this? Oh, look at this. Oh, really? Yes, yes, yes. And all of a sudden the phone rings, yes? He picks up the phone. Oh, mashallah, Habibi Hassan, how are you? Long time, no see. What's going on? The wife is thinking, hold on a minute. I've been talking to you for the last 10 minutes and you're just, yes, nodding. Now your friend calls and you're giving him your full attention, yes? Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam mentions this idea. He says, if you spend time with your wife, you get more reward by Allah than performing i'tikaf. I'tikaf is what? Is when you stay in a mosque for at least 3 days and you only worship God and you sleep and you eat out of necessity. But at least minimum 3 days, you are in the mosque. He says, if you spend time with your wife, you get more reward than i'tikaf in my mosque, Masjid al-Nabawi, which is the second greatest mosque. Yes? This is not a small matter. Abu Dharr al-Ghifari, Ridwanullahi ta'ala alayhi, one day came to the Holy Prophet. He said, Ya Rasulullah, teach me something. I want hasanat. I want to improve my relationship with Allah. The Prophet said, when was the last time you spent time with your wife? He said, what? That's something we do on the side. He said, no, 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 no. Go to your wife now. Spend some time with her. That is beloved to Allah. Indeed, when we converse with each other, the conversations must be much more than how is your day. So often that's how the conversation is. And we tell the other of what? Of how we went through the different, for example, stages. It should be more about our feelings, our thoughts, our experiences. Today, studies have shown that is much more effective. Yes? With this talking, there must be active listening of great importance. Yes? That there is attention that's given as far as this process of communication is concerned. Yes? Due diligence is given, that it is not just passed by, but careful attention is given to both talking and listening. But similarly, when it comes to this, there is a need for us to appreciate, and this is vital and should be part of any course. You know, in certain countries, I'm told in Malaysia, even in Iran, they go through courses before they get married. No doubt. This is very, very important, yes? They go through these training, because like anything else in life, you want to learn to drive, you need to go through a course, yes? You need to be taught. What gives us the assurance that I know how a marital life is? I tell you, most people don't. You know why? Because Allah Ta'ala has created the males and the females differently. They are different. And sometimes some of our brothers, as well as some of our sisters, they get the shock of their lives. The first year, second year in marriage, they say, oh my God, I didn't know it's like this. I see my mother and father in a particular manner and I thought that's how marriage is. Yes? The realization today is what? Today we have textbooks, we have instructions out there to highlight not only the physiological differences between males and females, but the psychological, the way they think, the way they expect certain factors in life, yes, that needs to be mastered, that needs to be developed. The greatest challenge happens in the first 8 years of marriage, yes. That is where it is deemed to be, for example, the most breakdowns and difficulties and arguments that happen, because people have not grasped the idea of the opposite gender. I give you examples. There are works that have been published in this regard. Yes, you and I have come across some of these works perhaps, that highlight the difference between the male and female in the way they interact. Yes, as an example, it is mentioned that women, females, are what? Are process oriented, whereas males are solution oriented. What does this mean? The husband comes back from work. When he comes back from work, he comes home, the wife has had a very tremendously difficult day. She's had a very hard time. So she says to him, you know, the day that I've had. He says, yes. She says, in the morning, the vacuum cleaner didn't work. And then I tried, I was cooking, and then I was speaking to my mother, and the chicken and the rice was burnt because I left it and I didn't realize it was on the oven. Yes? Then what? Then I got a call from school that our son was in trouble. I had to go to the head teacher. Yes? Normally, the male who is solution oriented, what does he say? The response to the wife, that is normally, but it's not the right response, is don't worry, I'll fix the vacuum cleaner, we'll get a takeaway, and I'll sort out our son. But it is more likely that the wife was looking for empathy, attention, and someone to relate to her, rather than just solutions being presented. Yes? It is more likely that she wanted that sentence from the husband, I'm so sorry to hear this, you're going through so much, may Allah bless you, I pray for you. Yes. Things like this, yes? It is different to the first thing that comes in, because that's how men work. Yes, that's how men work. You know, when people, the males, they speak to each other, immediately looking for solutions, how to do things, right? Similarly, we are told that when there is a problem, the female comes to the male, the wife comes to the husband and says, you know what, I'm upset. Oh no, she doesn't look happy. The husband comes to her and says, are you okay? She's like, yeah, I'm okay. He says, very well. He moves on. The realization is no. The wife wants the husband to say, hold on. No, you're not okay. I want to know what's wrong with you. Tell me. Give me let me find out. Is it this? Is it this? Have I done something? Yes? It is the call from the wife to say, investigate further. Don't just walk away. Ask, yes? Whereas the husband, the male, when they're upset, they go into a cave. They go, into isolation. Yes? That's how we've been presented with modern day understanding of the different setups of the males and females. This information, I'm just giving you the tip of the iceberg. We need to know so that we are able to communicate with the other effectively. And one of the key factors when it comes to successful marriage is to understand love. My dear brothers and sisters, please pay attention to what I'm about to say. When you and I converse with others, when we have a conversation, we need to have the understanding of the language that they speak. Otherwise, if I speak to a Chinese person who doesn't know English, I come and speak to them English or Arabic, they stare at me and say, I don't know what you're talking about, yes? In order for that person to understand me, they need to understand my language. Similarly, we are told, as far as love is concerned, which is a prerequisite for a happy, tranquil marital relationship, love, there are languages to express love. There are ways in which the husband and the wife present their love to the other. Sometimes what happens is, if we don't master the love language of our husband or wife, we are barking at the wrong tree. Meaning that we're doing something, we think we're expressing love, but the other side is not necessarily receiving it, because that's now not how they expect to be loved. Yes? Let me give you an example. Today there is a book which is known as The 5 Love Languages by a man by the name of Gary Chapman. Yes? He talks about these 5 love languages. He says there are, for example, words of affirmation, acts of service, gifts, yes? When it comes to intimacy and touch, as well as quality time. He says these are the 5 love languages. Sometimes a husband presents a gift to the wife, she's not really looking for that gift, yes? She's looking more of him providing some chores in the household. That is an act of service. That will mean much more to her than what? Than, for example, words of affirmation, when he will express his love towards her, yes? How do we find out each other's love language? Very simply, there are tools online, yes? There are ways of asking each other out of these, for example, and others. How do you prefer to receive love? What is your method of getting that compassion, that affinity that exists what? Between the husband and the wife, yes? And similarly, of great importance, we are told what? We are told that in a marriage, in most marriages, there are conflicts that will arise. There are disputes. There are disagreements. And these disputes and disagreements, by the way, are not necessarily bad. We can utilize them for our development. Quran says, وَتَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْبِرِّ وَالتَّقْوَى وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. The teachings of the Ahlul Bayt come to us and give us a very interesting direction as far as conflict management is concerned. Some people say, let's face it, in a marriage, there are instances where people fight with each other, and it is not unusual. So, we need to learn how to fight right. In which way? Let me give you a number of examples. We are told that sometimes there is a false notion in the minds of certain brothers and sisters that when they get married, they want the other person to conform to their own vision of how their wife or their husband should be. Many times we're thinking, I need to change my wife. I need to change my husband to how I want them to be. The process which leads to a successful, happy relationship is for the husband and the wife to start from within and to ask themselves, how can I mold my personality and how do I change myself first and foremost? Please appreciate this very important point. What do we mean here? In many cases, when we don't like something that is happening between the husband and the wife, we feel disgruntled, we feel upset, we start having what? Thoughts, we start being remorseful and so on and so forth. But the realization is there are different ways to come out of this by looking at ourselves and how we can adapt to the situation and compromise and work together to come to a meaningful solution together. No doubt, in many cases it requires both the husband and the wife. But if we do it for the sake of Allah, many a times if the husband or the wife is stubborn, God forbid, and they're not willing to change, let's not be afraid to change. Yes. We're not necessarily perfect when we enter this relationship. Yes, it is marriage is the combination of two imperfect human beings coming together to attain perfection in Jannah. That is what it is. So we indeed become the mirror of each other in that, as far as this notion of dealing with conflict is concerned, there are some tips that are presented out there. The first is, let's choose the time for our arguments or disputes. It is said today in studies, the evening is not a good time. People are tired. People are depleted of their energy. So we are told, pick the right moment. Because sometimes people will say things that they don't necessarily mean. Yes? Secondly, if we do not address the problem of anger that we sometimes express, yes? And the words that we choose, there is no justification for insult. Don't say, yeah, she said this about me, or she said this, or she mentioned this. Marriages should not have any form of what? Abuse or insult, yes? Between the husband and wife. It is not right. It is haram. Remember, you're dealing with a mu'min and a mu'minah. They have the sanctity, they have the sacredness. Just because they're your wife doesn't give you the green light. Just mention certain words against them. And similarly, when it comes to the wife too. But, do they happen? Yes. How do we react to it? Of great importance is the power of forgiveness and the power of patience. So pivotal in this particular relationship, yes? We are told, similarly, when we have these debates, when we have these heated arguments, we should avoid using you. We should instead use I. I am disappointed. I wasn't expecting this. Not you are this. You are how this. You never this. Yes? Similarly, there are certain words that should never be used when it comes to conflict, and that is always and never. Don't ever use these words. Always and never. You never love me. You never give me this. You always shout at me. That's not true. Yes? But it's the human being's own tendency to try and exaggerate and to make themselves feel better by making this statement before the other. Yes? When it comes to this notion of trying to deal with a conflict, many times when there is this conflict or when there is a heated discussion, we don't listen to understand. We listen to reply. So when the wife or the husband is talking and saying, I'm very disappointed. When we went out, you did this. You're thinking, how am I going to respond to this? The first thing that comes to the mind is how to respond. Whereas in reality, let me understand where she is coming from. Let me see, maybe there is some truth to this notion. Maybe I need to work on some areas. Yes. Therefore, the realization emerges, and that is what? And that is, these are some of the factors and some of the ways in which we can look. And I end with this point. There is so much more that we can say. Like I said, these are all tips of the iceberg, but we need to investigate. We need to research, yes? We need to find out more. There is the love languages, and there is also the apology languages. Meaning what? Let's learn how and which language to address the other when there is a heated disagreement. What do we mean? We are told today that as far as dealing with conflict is concerned, there are different ways of expressing an apology. Sometimes some people would say, I am sorry. Sometimes some would say, I was wrong. Sometimes it is, what can I do to make it right? Sometimes it's, I won't do it again. And sometimes is, will you forgive me? Now, it could be others, yes? We need to sit down and decide what is the best way. How do you prefer when it comes to these areas, when it comes to expressing apology? Yes. And when you and I express apology, it is not a matter of weakness. People think, I never say sorry because that means she's won and I've lost and I can't bear with that. No, we should not think in that way. If we center everything around Allah, I'm doing it for the sake of Allah, Allah is going to be pleased. Why? Because I'm crushing my own ego. And no doubt, yes, I would do it for the sake of maintaining a happy, healthy marital relationship. Yes. Arguments, for example, should not happen in front of the children. Similarly, arguments should not necessarily be left to brew and get bigger and bigger. We should not come up with files from before. We should deal with the matter in question, not bring up issues of the last year or the last week and the last month if they're not related. Yes? These are all pointers on how we should develop ourselves and truly focus and work as a team, yes, as a mu'min and a mu'mina that Allah has blessed to come together, and we have a responsibility to build this important unit in the society, which is known as the family, to preserve it and to what? And to make it that which brings about righteous children who learn the best ways to practice marriage and marital relationship from their parents. And that's why when you look at the 10th of Muharram, you look at the epic of Karbala, you look at the story of Abu Abdullah Al-Hussein, there are indeed examples of human beings, of great individuals who have recognized and indeed have left this legacy as far as being role models for both men and women is concerned, especially the youth, yes? And indeed one of them is Ali al-Akbar, salamullahi alayhi, yes. Ali al-Akbar, according to some narrations, was the oldest son of Imam Hussain alayhi salam. And indeed the Imam would have a special relationship with Ali al-Akbar, in that some point to the fact that on the way to Karbala, what do we find? We find that Imam alayhi salam, whilst he was riding, he fell asleep just for a few minutes. Ali al-Akbar was right next to him. When he came back, Ali said to him, Father, what has happened? I saw that you drifted away. He said, I saw death approaching us. Yes. Death coming towards us. Yes. Ali al-Akbar says, Abata, alasna ala al-haq? Are we not on the right path? Imam Hussain said, of course we are. Yes. Ali al-Akbar responds, then we are not afraid whether death comes towards us or we go towards death. This was a demonstration from the Imam of the beauty and the wonderful personality of Ali al-Akbar. That is why one of the most painful moments for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein was the moment that Ali al-Akbar, the first member of Bani Hashim, came to seek permission. Imam al-Hussein normally would say to people, go back. He would not normally give permission to the people, except of course some of his companions. But as far as his family members are concerned, he would often refuse. But for Ali al-Akbar, he wanted one thing. He said to him, Bunay Ali, ilayya ilay, ashumuka wa tashumuni, uwaddi'uka wa tuwaddi'uni. Hada al-wada' Allahu Akbar. It was the time to bid farewell. For Ali al-Akbar, it was a matter of bidding farewell for his father. The narration says they embraced each other. One narration says they fell onto the ground. They were unconscious because they were crying. Yes. May Allah never show a father a moment that they were about to lose their son or their daughter. Yes. It is not something that normally fathers see. Yes. But Abu Abdullah had to see so many calamities. He had to see so many difficulties in his life. Yes. And especially on the 10th of Muharram. The narrations point that when Ali al-Akbar rose to go to the battlefield, Abu Abdullah raised his hands and prayed. He said, Allahumma ashhad ala ha'ula'i al-qawm faqad baraza ilayhim ghulam ashbahu an-nasi bi rasulika sallallahu alayhi wa alihi khalqan wa khuluqan wa mantiqa. This man that has emerged now to the battlefield, Ya Allah, be witness against these people, because he resembles Rasulullah in his appearance. He resembles the messenger with his akhlaq and the way he speaks. Every time we wanted to see Rasulullah, we would look at Ali al-Akbar. This would happen in Medina. People would come. They say, we missed Rasulullah. How does he look like? They would be told, go to the house of Hussein. There is a man by the name of Ali al-Akbar. He resembles Rasulullah the most. This is perhaps something that was even more heartbreaking for Imam al-Hussain alayhi salam. Ali al-Akbar goes to the battlefield. He fights valiantly, courageously. The thirst is heavy on him. He's still fighting. According to some narrations, his mother Layla was there on the plains of Karbala. Allahu Akbar. The mothers out there, they know how difficult it is to see their sons go for the final time and lose their sons. But Layla wanted Ali al-Akbar, wanted to see him one more time. She came out of the tent. She saw Abu Abdullah. She saw the face of Hussein change. She said to him, my master Abu Abdullah, has any harm fell upon my son Ali? He said to her, there is an enemy who had come to fight him. I'm afraid that he will hurt him. But Layla, if you want to see your son again, ask Allah, for the dua of the mother is answered by the Almighty. Layla enters the tent. She sits on the prayer mat. She removes her hijab. نظرت إلى السماء رفعت أيديها قالت إلهي بغربة أبا عبد الله يا راد يوسف إلى يعقوب رد إلي ولدي علي. Ya Allah, you know what she asks? She says, Ya Allah, you know that Hussein is alone on the battlefield. He is ghareeb. You're the one who returned Yusuf to Yaqub. Return to me my son Ali. The narration says Ali al-Akbar defeats that enemy man. He comes back, but he comes back with full of thirst. He looks at Imam al-Hussein. He says, Father, the weight of the armor is killing me. The thirst is overwhelming me. هل لي من شربة ماء أتقوى بها على الأعداء. Imam Al-Hussain, according to one narration, look at the love of the father. He would say to him, Bunay Ali, come next to me. Why, father, why? He says, I want to give you part of my saliva so that at least it will help you. Sa'ad Allah al-Basahib al-Asr wal-Zaman. Because Ali al-Akbar cries out, Abba ya Hussein, your mouth is even drier than mine. You are even more thirsty than mine. Indeed, Imam says to him, Bunay Ali, go to your mother Layla. She's waiting for you. Ali al-Akbar enters the tent. He finds his mother Layla on the ground unconscious. جلس عندها جعل يبكي وضع رأسها في حجره. He placed her head on his lap. Tears from his eyes fell on the cheeks of Layla. She was awakened. نظرت إليه. Ali, Bunay, this is you. Is this a dream? You've come back. Now she's asking him, Allahu Akbar. She says to him, Bunay Ali, stand up. Just stand up, please. He says, why? She says, I want to look at you. All I want is my eyes to look at you, Ali. I don't want anything else. Why does she want to look at Ali for the final time? She knows in a few moments she will see the battered, bruised body of Ali al-Akbar into pieces. Ajarakum Allah. Ali al-Akbar returns to the battlefield. The weight of the armor, the thirst gets to him. He stands to take a rest. An enemy comes from behind, says, I will make his father mourn for him. وضربه على رأسه فجعل فلق رأسه. The Imam alayhi salam hears the cries of Ali al-Akbar. عليك مني السلام أبتاه أبا عبد الله. Ali al-Akbar falls onto his horse, but you know his horse, he is blinded by the blood of Ali al-Akbar. So instead of taking him to the Imam's side, he took him to the side of the enemies. They surrounded him. One man stabbed him on his body. Another man hit him with a pole. A third person would strike him with a sword. He fell onto the ground. Imam Al-Hussain rushed to the battlefield. Yes, according to some narrations, Sukaina looked at Imam. She would say, Abatah, the voice of Ali al-Akbar is this direction. Why is it that you're going this way? He looked at her and says, Bunay Sukaina la talumuni. Do not blame me, for I have indeed heard the cries of my son, and I don't know which direction to take. I do not know where to go. How painful it is for the father to hear his son call him and not able to help him. The poet says, when Imam was going towards his son Ali al-Akbar, جعل ينظر إلى Najaf, and he looked at the direction of Najaf, and he started to say, Father Ali, you lifted the gates of Khaybar, but you never had to lift the body of your son. He came next to his son Ali al-Akbar, جلس عنده, جعل ينظر إليه, قال بني علي على الدنيا بعدك العفا. Oh Ali, what is the worth of this dunya when you have left? Now you've left your father alone in this world, and your father can't help you. But at that moment, he saw Ali al-Akbar smiling on one direction, and he saw him grieved on the other. Allahu Akbar. Yes. He asked him, Bunay Ali, why is it that you smile, and why is it that you are grieved? He says, Abata, Ya Aba Abdullah, ala yasari Rasulullah. I see Rasulullah قد سقاني بشربة من الماء لن أظمأ بعدها أبدا. Rasulullah has given me water, I'll never be thirsty again. وعن يميني جدتي فاطمة الزهراء وهي تلطم وجهها وتصيح وحسينا وشهيدا ومظلوما وغريبا. فاقت روح علي الأكبر رحم الله من نادى وعليا Ali, oh Bani Hashim, come and carry the body of my son Ali. I can't carry his body. But at that moment, Layla comes out and says, where is my Ali al-Akbar? Let me see the body of Ali. They placed the body of Ali in a tent. Zainab, the Rabab, of this, indeed Layla, they all come out. They come inside the tent. They look at Ali al-Akbar. Aywa Ali, oh son Ali, what is it that we're going to do after you? How can our eyes see your body, Ali? Yes, Imam Zayn al-Abidin says that when I came to bury my father Abu Abdullah, I looked at the body of my brother Ali al-Akbar and I saw how his body was torn into pieces. Sa'ad Allah qalbana.